The majority of American workers overall, we're talking 58%, say they are behind on retirement saving. And Gen Xers, that's those 44 to 60, those getting ever closer to retirement age, they are really worried. 69% of them say they are behind.
I just turned 50 this summer, and the thought of working for 17 more years is painful. I want to know how I can retire in like 5 years, because I just don't think I can do this anymore. So how are we retiring, ladies, people, anyone?
I am so worried that I'm never going to be able to retire. And that's a really sad thought. My husband is not worried about finances at all, but he also doesn't have anxiety like I do.
Talking to that 62-year-old lady at the gas station who's practically in tears because she can't retire. Working your whole life, did everything right, and now she still has to show up every day just to survive. This is the country we live in, where retirement is an absolute fantasy.
I just read an interesting story about retirement assets. And the story is that only 9% of Americans have $2 million or more in retirement assets, and that surprised me.
We asked people, what do you think you'll need to retire? What should that nest egg be? More than 25% told us they do not know. And okay, I appreciate the honesty, but not having an answer to that question is sort of like, very suboptimal.
That a lot of people do worry about. We are talking about retirement, right? Questions, many of them pop into your head right away when you talk about this. Will I be able to retire? When will I be able to? What's it gonna look like? And, well, am I saving enough money? You can take a look here at this data right here. It's a new Bankrate survey, and it finds the majority of American workers overall, we're talking 58%, say they are behind on retirement saving. And Gen Xers, that's those 44 to 60, those getting ever closer to retirement age, they are really worried. 69% of them say they are behind.
Okay, so before they get to the reasons as to why a lot of people feel like they're not ready to retire yet, and especially makes sense for those people who are closer to retirement age, 44 to 60 years old, it makes obvious sense that they're going to be more concerned over whether or not they're prepared for retirement. Let's hear from some other real people as to why they feel concerned about it and why they're worried.
How are we retiring early? This is what I want to know. I just turned 50 this summer, and the thought of working for 17 more years is painful. I keep myself in pretty good shape, but as a recipe developer, that's my day job. I mean, my only job. I'm on my feet all day, every day, and I just don't know if I'll be able to keep up. I think I'm relevant because no one knows how old I am. They all think I'm in my 30s, which I'll take, but I am 50. I want to know how I can retire in like 5 years, because I just don't think I can do this anymore. So also not a self-motivated person. So there, in fact, the problem lies. So how are we retiring, ladies, people, anyone? Like, how are we supposed to do things at 67? 67. We're supposed to like be mobile, go on the plane, travel around. I know we're not dead at 67. Well, hopefully, Lord willing. How are we supposed to live the rest of our lives starting at 67? What am I even saving for? Why do I have a high yield savings account? Why do I have like all of these different accounts that I have money in? Am I going to be able to use it? Because I will be so old by then.
Okay, so she's talking about retiring early at 55. She keeps on using this number 67. 67 refers to the full retirement age to receive Social Security benefits. Sorry, 67 is the age at which you can receive your full Social Security benefits without taking a deduction. So that's what she's talking about. She obviously does work that's very mobile. She has to use her body a lot, which is probably why she's thinking about retiring early, although a lot of people think about retiring early, and she's concerned about how to do it. As you can see, or as she said, she puts money into high yield savings account. It sounds like she puts money away for a rainy day and for a future. So she's not totally, hanging out to dry, but it's a good question, a good point that she's trying to bring up. So let me know, do you feel prepared for retirement? Do you not feel prepared for retirement?
Short term, you got rising prices over the last few years. Inflation has cut into what could be going into savings. Long term, well, changes in employment. We don't stay with a company for as long as we used to. And the benefits those companies offer have changed.
Very few employers, predominantly the government agencies that are unionized, are the sole survivors providing pension benefits.
So they just mentioned a few reasons why a lot of people are feeling that they're not prepared for retirement, of which one is inflation. As we all know, if you don't live under a rock, you know that everything now is more expensive, from housing to the cost of gas, to the cost of food, to the cost of education, to the cost of childcare, you name it. everything is going through the roof in terms of expenses. So that's one reason. Changes in employment, way people handle employment. You know, they don't stay with one company for a long term like they used to. Part of that is because companies don't offer pensions anymore, which we're about to discuss. Another part of that is because in order to get more pay, you have to kind of leave your job every so often. When I first graduated college, every 2 or 3 years, I would change to another job. A lot of them frown upon it, but it was the only way I would get a 10 to 15% increase or 5 to 10% increase in my annual salary was by leaving the job I was at. With that being said, they mentioned something that's very key. This is the problem that is causing people to be fearful whether or not they're gonna have enough to retire. One is that the pension versus 401k problem. So a while ago, maybe in the 50s, 60s, 40s, a lot more companies, private companies, offered pensions. Nowadays, unless you work for the federal government or for a local or state government, most of the times you're not going to receive a pension. So what's the difference between a pension and a 401k? Pension is a defined benefit, whereas a 401k is a defined contribution. When you have a pension, it's a defined benefit. You work for a company for however many years. When you retire, that company is going to pay you pretty much in perpetuity until you croak, for lack of a better word, sorry to be crude or crass. They're going to pay you a defined amount of money that's going to be based normally on the amount of years you work for the company and the average of your highest earning years. The company is going to take the money you pay into the pension system while you work for that company. The company takes that money you pay into the system and they invest it into the market most of the times. These are what you call an institutional investor. And they are responsible for what the return on that investment is. Regardless of what the return is to them, they owe you that money as a pension. Whereas with the 401k, the onus is now on you as an individual, you and I. So if you retire and your investment portfolio has not done very well at all, it's kind of too bad, too sad. That's why it's a defined contribution. How much you put in is up to you. Some companies put a match, and of course you're limited by federal regulations per year how much you put into 401k, but it's a contribution that you're putting in that you know what it is versus how much you're going to be receiving, because you don't know what the market's going to do and what you're going to receive when you retire.
You guys have me in such a tizzy about my finances that I am so worried that I'm never going to be able to retire. And that's a really sad thought. I'm just being dramatic. My husband is not worried about finances at all. He does not want to contribute any more to our 401ks, but he also doesn't have anxiety like I do. A nice lady on the internet mentioned that maybe I should consider getting a financial advisor to advise me on what I should be doing with what money I do have. I considered getting a financial advisor a few years ago, and my dad actually talked me out of it. He said that that job was really not necessary. If you know what you're doing, you don't really need a financial advisor, but I don't know what I'm doing.
So this is very apropos to what we were just discussing. So here's the issue. She does not know how to invest her money. Her husband sounds like he may know how to invest it, or he's just not worried about it. But the point is now she's considering whether or not she should get a financial advisor to help her determine what to do with her money with the defined contributions so that when she retires, she has a nest egg. Versus the pension where that onus will be on the employer. She's concerned that when she retires, oh no, will I have enough money in my account? Will I have enough money to live off of to supplement my Social Security, or so that my Social Security can supplement that money when I have no idea what I'm doing? A lot of common knowledge, or a lot of common things you'll hear on the internet now is that, you know, keep it simple. Just invest in a total stock market ETF or index fund like VTSAX, or into an S&P 500 fund like VOO. You're gonna hear VOO, or some people call it VOO, which I don't like, but that you're gonna hear that very often. Those are very common ideas people have because it's very simple and you can make it automatic. Those are a combination or a bucket or a pool, basket, a lot of people like to say, of stocks. So instead of one company, company A, you have company A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down Z, 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 and further. So that way, if one company goes to zero, you have all these other companies in the basket to make sure that your investment doesn't go to zero. That's why her father's probably like, listen, you don't need to have a financial advisor. You can do it yourself, especially with all the information that's available online nowadays. But some people are just completely lost, or completely, finance is not their thing. And so maybe they want to consider a financial advisor. And maybe you want to consider a financial advisor. It's a completely personal decision.
It is very challenging, and you layer all of that with the idea that the promised benefits of Social Security may not be payable within a decade because of the funding shortfall with the trust fund. So yeah, there's a lot going on with all this.
The survey found people are trying to save. In fact, about 24% say they are saving more than last year. 36% say they're putting away the same amount, while only 17% say they're saving less. I know you ask people about what they kind of think they're going to need in retirement. Are people realistic about those numbers?
I would say not as realistic as they need to be. And so, for example, we ask people, what do you think you'll need to retire? What should that nest egg be? And more than 25% told us they do not know. And okay, I appreciate the honesty, but not having an answer to that question is sort of like, very suboptimal. The majority of the people answering said they thought it would be $500,000 or more. But if you take a traditional approach in, let's say, parsing that savings nest egg into an annual withdrawal, $500,000 using the 4% rule will give you $20,000 a year.
So he's talking about the 4% rule. This is this is a formula. The idea is you take however much you think you're going to need in retirement and you multiply it by 25. Okay, the math works out to where then that amount that you multiply by 25 is how much you need in retirement account, and you can withdraw 4% of that. Okay, so let me show you some math on screen, and let me rephrase what I just said, because I started with $1 million. Let's say that you think you need $40,000 a year when you retire to live off of. So you're gonna use a 25 times rule. You say, okay, $40,000 is what I'm going to need when I retire. That's 400,000. You're gonna multiply that by 25. That gives you $1 million. So then you're gonna say, okay, so at $1 million, by the way, this works out to where if you take a 4% withdrawal every year on that $4 million, okay, so times 0.04, you obviously get back to $40,000. So that's where that comes from. So what this guy was just talking about is that a lot of people say they're gonna need starting from 500,000 upwards. At $500,000, obviously it's $500,000. That's $20,000 per year. I don't know about you, but I personally, even now as a single guy with no kids, cannot survive off of $20,000 per year. And that's the main point they're trying to talk about here.
Talking to that 62-year-old lady at the gas station who's practically in tears because she can't retire. Working your whole life, did everything right, and now she still has to show up every day just to survive. This is the country we live in, where retirement is an absolute fantasy, where your golden years are just more years of labor until you die. Meanwhile, our government sends billions of dollars overseas, bails out banks, throws parties in DC, but tells you, sorry, we can't help you. You're on your own. You break your back, you pay your taxes, you beg for scraps. We don't live in a free country, folks. We live in a system that feeds off our labor until we have nothing left to give. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it's supposed to. So, in the ending here, we should all be a little pissed off. Actually, not just pissed off, we should be furious that we live in a country where our government doesn't give a shit about you, only how much money you can pay in taxes. But when you die, it's over.
So could the federal government use taxpayer money more efficiently and use it on things that most people would probably prefer that it uses it on? I'm gonna say that without taking a poll or a show of hands, that a lot of us probably think that and probably feel that way and share that sentiment. And so when you're someone like this guy who goes into some place, some establishment, Walmart, grocery store, wherever you go, and you see an elderly person that's still working, not because they want to, because maybe they're bored with nothing else to do, but because they have to, because they don't have enough in retirement to sustain their lifestyle, yes, it makes you upset. Because in a country that we live in, like the United States, which is a great country, do not get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not. It is sad to see that that's the case for a lot of people and a lot of Americans, because they just weren't financially prepared, they weren't financially educated, or they just didn't have the tools or the resources maybe, or whatever the case may be, to be prepared for retirement. And again, things have changed to where back when there was a pension, okay? I don't know, Social Security went into effect in 1935, I believe. And so let's just think about a time where, let's say 40s, 50s, 60s. And again, I know that there were disparities. I mean, look at me. So I'm not talking about that right now, but let's say you received a pension when you retired, plus you received Social Security when you retired. I mean, you were probably in a decent spot. Nowadays, I mean, we have declining birth rates, so fewer people are going to be paying into the system, into the Social Security Trust Fund, so that might not be around. You have fewer and fewer companies that are offering pensions. Really, it's just, like I said, government agencies, so you're probably not getting the pension. And even if you are getting the 401k, a lot of times you don't know how to even invest your money. And by the way, just the 401k alone probably won't even be enough to sustain you anyways. You're gonna need multiple sources.
I just read an interesting story about retirement assets. And the story is that only 9% of Americans have $2 million or more in retirement assets. And that surprised me. I thought it would be more with all the decades of IRA and 401k saving. So I was surprised by that. What do you guys think? Is that a surprisingly small number, or is that an unattainable number in your experience?
So I'll give my 2 cents before I hop into some comments. My 2 cents is no, it's not surprising whatsoever. I think, in no disrespect to this gentleman, I think he may be a little bit out of touch. Maybe he is not aware that a lot of people don't even make that much money to be able to invest $2 million over their careers. You know, I mean, he's talked about Roth IRAs and 401ks. A lot of people don't even know what those things are. A lot of people don't even receive those benefits who work 30, 40 plus years. So no, I'm not surprised at all that only 9% of Americans have a net worth of $2 million or more when they retire. I'm surprised it's that high. But anyways, let's hop into the comment section to see what other people think, because this is my opinion. And of course, let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you think does that number surprise you, or are you not at all surprised by that? Cozy Blanket 2752 says, I think 9% is high. Pensions are going away. People can't save money anymore. We just talked about that. I think they're very correct. Someone says nowhere near 9%, maybe 2% at best. Where are you getting that statistic? Good point. I'm just going off what he said. I don't know if his stat is even correct or not. Dusty Hughes Eisman says, $2 million. Are you serious? Of course, most Americans don't have that. It's so expensive to live, let alone line save. She means to say, let alone save it all. While they were supposed to be saving all that, they were also raising kids, paying bills and mortgages. I think I share Dusty Hughes Eisman's sentiment that, yes, it's difficult to save it all right now, let alone get $2 million worth of money in a nest egg, especially when you're not financially educated. We've already talked about that, so I think she's spot on with that. Here's a different perspective that I kind of like. This person says, not surprising, people buy things instead of investing. This is Joe Holmes. So I think Joe has a point. I think that while it is the fact that things are a lot more expensive now, it is also a little bit of it. People just tend to not do enough of self-education when they should, because it's one thing to not be educated, but the information is out there, especially now. So if you're not financially educated, if you don't know what a 401k is or a Roth IRA is, or you're spending your money, now I get if you're spending on necessities and you're living hand to mouth and check to check, that's different. But if you have some disposable income and you're just kind of ignoring the fact that you might live to a certain age and you're just spending that money on, you know, discretionary things you enjoy, while you should be doing that, you should also be considering your future self and putting money away for that. So Bob Jones says essentially what Joe Holmes just said. Doesn't surprise me, certainly attainable, but most people don't plan for the future. They complain about it, how hard it is to live. So, you know, let's leave it on that. I want to hear your comments in the comment section. What do you think? Do you agree more with Joe and Bob, or do you agree more with Dusta and Cozy Blanket? Do you think it's more so people just are struggling out here and they can't even think or fathom to put money away in investments anyways, if they wanted to? Or do you think it's more so that people just don't consider their future self enough and they don't put money away for that reason? Let me know what you think in the comment section. I tend to lean towards people don't earn enough. And this is coming from someone who is not in that bucket, so I'm not making excuses. I think that most Americans, they just don't earn enough, especially compared to household size and especially compared to how expensive things are to really put that much money away. But while I say that in one breath, I'm gonna talk out the other side of my mouth and say, there are ways people can do it. And, you know, I'm a big Dave Ramsey method believer that if you're an average person, that if you just pay off all your debt and stay out of it, you work really hard, especially for a short period of time, and invest money, that you can put yourself in a position to have a decent nest egg when you retire if you make smart decisions. Anyways, I'll stop rambling with that. Like I said, let me know what you think in the comment section. And until next time, make smart financial decisions.